Gurrah Mila Magat agus tá an áhas orm a bheith an seo. I always think it's important to use a few words in my own Gaelic language when I'm at an international event. But ladies and gentlemen, very distinguished guests, and Madam Minister, can I thank you for the warmth and generosity of your welcome and hospitality. It's a real pleasure to be here, and I'm very honoured and indeed humbled by the experience and the wisdom of all of the participants within not just this event, but of course those this morning and last night. And today we gather here to discuss one of the most pressing challenges facing our continent, the need for reconciliation and restoration of trust in Europe, particularly during the war of aggression by Russia on Ukraine. As parliamentarians and civil society representatives, it's our collective responsibility to explore effective means, including cultural diplomacy, to promote unity, understanding, and lasting peace among nations. I speak here as not just a member of the Irish Senate, but as the head of the Irish delegation to the Council of Europe and as rapporteur on the priorities for the fourth summit. And just to tell you a little bit about that, the Council of Europe has been in existence for 74 years. Up to last May, there had only ever been 3 summits where heads of government and state would come together to discuss urgent and pressing needs. And thankfully, there was an agreement that we needed a 4th summit, which was held in Reykjavik on the 14th of May, so that all of the 46 member states could commit to renew their commitment to first principles, to safeguarding and promoting genuine democracy. The Council of Europe is a very distinguished institution, and we owe much to it for its role in Europe's moral and cultural reconstruction after the devastation of World War II. And it's provided an essential legal framework for the building of peaceful societies, highlighting the fundamental principles of pluralist democracy, respect for human rights and the rule of law, as well as its setting of standards in human rights through the European Convention on Human Rights System in particular. So there's been key achievements confirming the common goal that we all have of a more tolerant and just society in Europe. One of the greater benefits of the Council of Europe is in its wider membership than that of the European Union. And I honestly believe that the Council demonstrates the importance of reaching out to our shared responsibilities to social, economic and ecological rights that can offer cohesion, fulfilment and sustainability. If we believe, as I do, that the Council of Europe is the conscience of Europe, then I think that cultural diplomacy can lay claim to being the soul of Europe. Just a few months ago, my Prime Minister and counterparts and colleagues at the European Parliament unveiled a bust of a great Derry man who knew the European community well. John Hume, and I'm sure his name is familiar to many of you, served 25 years as an MEP and a lifetime as an advocate for peace and human rights through listening, through peaceful negotiation. Accepting the Nobel Peace Prize in 1998, he recalled his frequent walks across the bridge from Strasbourg to Kehl, a bridge connecting France and Germany. A symbol that he marvelled was so simple yet so profound and so applicable to conflict resolution anywhere in the world. And in the same address, he observed that ultimately all conflict is about difference. But while some see difference as a threat, John like the visionaries who bridged the Rhine, recognised it as the essence of humanity, and that the answer to difference is to respect it. John was seldom wrong, but in this he was never more right. Respecting difference, that is the key to the Council of Europe and the European Court of Human Rights, which has always been its and our guiding compass. Today, as war sadly rages in Ukraine, the Council and indeed the European continent itself stands at a crossroads, and at such times we need to hold our moral compass close and orient ourselves by first principles. As we look forward to a time when the war of aggression is over, I believe that we need to set out a longer-term vision of all of our roles in a post-conflict Europe and how that role might fit within the wider multilateral and institutional architecture. We must revert to fundamental strengths in rebuilding peace, notably the bedrock that is the European Convention on Human Rights. It must now be re-invoked, extended, bolstered and reasserted, and become part of the European street. An under-recognised strength of the Council of Europe has been its emphasis on the role of culture in nurturing democracy. For the Irish, a nation attached to the preservation of our ancient Gaelic language, the adoption of the Convention for the Protection of National Minorities, to give but one example, was an important step towards the recognition of cultural rights throughout Europe. It's important at a time of deep conflict which we are experiencing to refer to the value of culture and to recall what we share in it. For example, there are deep historical and cultural connections between the people of Russia and the people of Europe, and ones that hopefully can serve as a basis for future contact and dialogues with Russia in better times. And we must remain open to such a cultural dialogue, and we can be assisted by groups in civil society. In times of conflict and division, it is cultural diplomacy that can serve as a powerful tool for building bridges and fostering reconciliation. Through cultural exchange and understanding, we have the opportunity to connect people, heal wounds, and rebuild trust. Cultural diplomacy has the potential to transcend political differences and contribute to long-lasting peace in Europe. Cultural diplomacy can play a crucial role in creating space for dialogue and the exchange of ideas by inviting artists, musicians, writers, and those from different countries affected by the Ukraine war, as we've heard in relation to Moldova. We can provide a platform for open discussions where diverse perspectives can be shared and understood. And this exchange of cultural expressions can promote empathy, challenge stereotypes, and perhaps even inspire new solutions to the conflicts that have plagued our continent. Cultural diplomacy allows us to celebrate the rich diversity of European cultures and promote mutual respect. Cultural festivals, exhibitions and performances can serve as catalysts to restore a sense of unity among nations that have been divided. Only last night at our welcome dinner, when I remarked how wonderful the entertainment from the Children's Cultural Centre in Corpash was, and how it reminded me of some aspects of Irish music and song, I too was reminded by another guest at the table about our similar history of conflict with neighbours. I agree that cultural education programmes can play a vital role in fostering reconciliation among the younger generations. By integrating educational initiatives focused on mutual understanding, tolerance and peace building into school curriculums, we can help share the future generation as ambassadors of reconciliation. When young minds are exposed to the wonder of different cultures, their perspectives broaden and they become agents of change in breaking down barriers and prejudices. The Council of Europe, in collaboration with member states and cultural organisations, must also promote the restoration and preservation of cultural heritage that has been damaged or destroyed during conflicts. Cultural sites and artefacts hold immense value, not just for individual nations, but for our shared European identity. By investing in the restoration and protection of these cultural treasures, we signify a commitment to healing the wounds of the past and nurturing a brighter future for all. And Mother Teresa is somebody that is known to all of us, not just throughout Europe, but throughout the world. And it's wonderful to be able to have the opportunity to go and see a museum dedicated to her tomorrow. Reconciliation is not just a political process, it's a deeply human endeavour. Through the lens of cultural diplomacy, we have the opportunity to promote understanding, empathy, and healing. By investing in the restoration of trust among nations, we can lay the foundations for a resilient and united Europe. We must prepare now for the end of the war of aggression. The Council of Europe is advocating for a comprehensive approach to the post-conflict situation in Ukraine. This would involve promoting dialogue and reconciliation, supporting democratic processes, fostering respect for human rights, and working towards the reintegration of affected regions. The Council of Europe has a range of mechanisms and instruments it can deploy to facilitate post-conflict recovery and rebuilding trust, such as expert advice, monitoring missions, and assistance programmes. Safeguarding and promoting democracy in Europe must be important to all of us. I believe that democracy is not just a system of governance, it is a fundamental that should be protected and nurtured. It is the fundamental of a society that believes in freedom, human rights, and the pursuit of common good. Europe, with its rich history and diverse cultures, has showcased both moments of triumph and episodes of darkness over the centuries. It has witnessed the rise and the fall of empires, experienced wars that have ravaged nations, and triumph over adversity. In the aftermath of World War II, Europe came to understand that a prosperous and sustainable future could only be secured through democratic principles. And today, as we stand united in this beautiful but ravaged continent, we bear the responsibility of preserving the democratic values that our predecessors fought so hard to secure. However, we must also confront the challenges that face us, guaranteeing a genuine democracy for all European citizens. One of these challenges, which Mark mentioned this morning, is the erosion of trust between citizens and their elected representatives. Distrust breeds scepticism, and scepticism undermines the democratic process. As leaders, we must make it our mission to rebuild this trust by being open, transparent, and accountable to those that we serve. Another challenge we face is in the rise of populism and extremist ideologies that seek to exploit fears and manipulate public opinion. To counter these divisive forces, we must strengthen the pillars of democracy by promoting education, critical thinking, and intercultural dialogue. Only through knowledge can we combat ignorance and fake news and build bridges between communities. Moreover, we must also address the issue of media manipulation and disinformation. The internet and social media have given us a vast marketplace of ideas, but they've also created an environment where facts can be distorted and truth can be obscured. We must work together to ensure that our citizens have access to reliable, unbiased information, and moreover, we must empower our media institutions to be objective and accountable, watching acting as the watchdogs of democracy. As we forge ahead in the 21st century, we must embrace the use of technology to democratic processes. E-voting, open data initiatives, and digital platforms for citizen participation are just a few examples of how technology can empower individuals and strengthen democracy. We must harness this potential while ensuring that the digital divide does not create new barriers to participation. Democracy, at its core, is about giving power to the people. It is a system that provides all citizens with equal rights, opportunities, and the freedom to express their views. It is a system that thrives on the protection of human rights and the rule of law. However, democratic institutions are not immune to decay. The very essence of democracy can be undermined by a lack of transparency, corruption, misinformation, and the weakening of checks and balances. We've seen these challenges manifest in recent years, posing a significant threat to stability and of democratic societies. To prevent the backsliding of democracy, we must first recognise the signs. We must be able to identify the erosion of democratic norms, the manipulation of media, and the abuse of power. By acknowledging these warning signs, we can take timely action to protect democracy from further decay. Furthermore, we must invest in strong and independent institutions that act as the guardians of democracy. An independent judiciary, a free press, and a vibrant civil society who are holding those in power accountable we must defend these as they're fundamental in our democratic values. It's imperative, as I said, that we combat the spread of misinformation, disinformation, and manipulation. We must work together to support fact-checking organisations and ensure that social media platforms are responsible in curtailing the dissemination of false information. We must also foster an inclusive, mandatory democracy that values diversity and is responsive to the needs and the concerns of all citizens. Only through inclusive democracy can we ensure that the voices of all citizens are heard and accounted for. In the face of the Russian Federation's aggression against Ukraine, we must accept that genuine democracy is not only a commitment of each member state towards their citizens, but also a responsibility to other member states, since it is only genuine democracies which can guarantee democratic security and achieve the common goal of pursuing peace based upon justice and international cooperation. There is criticism that traditional democratic institutions and political forces have failed to meet citizens' expectations in response to major challenges in recent decades, such as globalisation, COVID, migratory movements, the digital revolution, and its impact on all aspects of society, climate change, economic stagnation, and growing inequalities. And they're all said to have contributed to a general feeling of dissatisfaction with democracy. We have to do better. There is no doubt that Europe is confronted with extraordinary challenges. The human suffering endured by the Ukrainian people is unbearable, but this aggression has consequences that go far beyond Ukraine. All Europeans are impacted through the weaponisation of immigration, through higher energy costs, and the effects of a virulent economic recession. Europe has changed, but we have to insist that our values do not change. In the face of the extraordinary challenges that we face, the values of democracy, human rights, and the rule of law must continue to be our compass. We must reiterate that rules-based multilateralism is the pivot of the international order and firmly reject unilateralism based on the use of force. The aggression against Ukraine has been defined as a point of no return. It is our responsibility to ensure that this war also becomes the starting point for a renewed, improved and confident Europe with a greater capacity to contribute to our shared democratic security and to respond to our citizens' real concerns. In conclusion, the protection and promotion of democracy while preventing the backsliding of democratic principles is a shared responsibility. As we face these challenges, we must stand united in our commitment to upholding democratic values, rebuilding trust, countering extremism, strengthening institutions, preserving transparency and combating misinformation. We must work together through cultural diplomacy to protect the democratic values that make our continent vibrant and strong. So let us all work together to build where democracy thrives, where the rights and freedoms of all citizens are respected, and where the voice of the people guide our collective destiny. By doing so, we can and must ensure that Europe becomes a beacon of freedom, justice and progress for generations to come. Thank you.